Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Sweeter After Difficulty podcast. My name is Randy Highsmith. I'm your host today. And with me, as always, you know him, you love him, our regular guests, Jordan Lopez and Chris Anderson. Boys, how are you today?
Hey, Randy.
Hey,
Good.
Randy. Doing good.
Well,
Yeah, good. Good to see you guys. All right. So, you know the drill. We're going to start out with a quote. I will kick it over shortly to the quote master general himself, Jordan Lopez, to get us started. But before I do, as always, we want to just start the show with a little gratitude. Thank you to everybody who's out there listening and following along with us. Thank you to all the amazing comments that we get when we see you live in person. We have so much fun doing this and so many more fun things coming. So thank you for following along with us. We hope you're having a good time. If you're not already, sign up to subscribe to our channel on Spotify and on Rumble. You can find all of our episodes there. Go all the way back. I think this is number 17. Whew. Cooking right along. So the full catalog is back there on Spotify and Rumble. Check those out. Give them a like, give them a share, make a comment, all the things that help our algorithm. We really appreciate it. But without further ado, we're going to jump right into this thing. So Jordan, what do we got today?
all right. The quote is about balance. The author's name is Catherine Pulsifer. Too much of one thing can end up creating stress. This is something that no one needs in their life, but having a life of balance can provide harmony and peace.
Yeah, this is a good one. Balance. It seems like I've been having a lot of conversations about balance in my life with people lately. Um, uh, let's talk because I think balance is such an interesting word and has such broad applications. Uh, when you hear the word balance, is there any visual or mental imagery that comes to your mind?
For myself, I know a lot of it comes from like my background when it came to cycling. We used to do a lot of balance training. Like an endo board was kind of what I used a lot of, which is like a piece of wood with a cylinder underneath it, and you would stand on it and kind of balance back and forth, and kind of getting good at kind of little adjustments here and there, not huge adjustments when it came to like mastering the tool. And I feel like in life, oftentimes too, it's those little tweaks here and there, not the big adjustments that usually will give you the most success when it comes to being balanced.
Yeah, yeah. That's actually an amazing analogy. I want to come unpack a little bit of that
Yeah.
as we go forward. What about you, Chris? Anything hit you immediately with the imagery?
Yeah, right away I got the balance beam versus the slack line image in my head. I don't know why it popped up, but to me, I'm like, yes, too much of one thing can create stress, but at the same time, how you find balance is certainly a skill, and the foundation that you build that balance on, whether you have something solid like a balance beam, is going to feel way different than if you're trying to build your balance on something that's like a slack line where it's always changing, which requires more adjustments and greater skill and so on.
Yeah, yeah. Got another great. You know what's awesome too is that mine is different from both of yours. So I'm super excited about that. Because what I think of immediately with balance is a scale. And when I think of a scale and what it's meant to do, it's meant to equate your resources versus the cost of something, right? And if you're too heavy one way or the other, it's too costly or it's too resource intense, right? So one of those things is going to be where you end up off balance. And I think that it applies completely equally to both of the examples that you guys use. So I'm super, super excited about this conversation now. So I think that in all three examples, there was one thing that really stuck out, and that was the answer to imbalance is not some crazy knee-jerk response or adding an excessive amount of resources or cost to one side or the other, right? It's about the small details, the small adjustments. So let's talk a little bit about I really actually I want to go into these examples. Jordan, you talked a little bit about that balance board in cycling. So what does that look like when you first start using that board? And then how can you kind of describe the process of getting used to shifting your weight and what it takes to master the balance on something like that?
Well, yeah, like when you first jump on it, right? It's like your feet are immediately are like jackhammering back and forth, trying to find that center line point. And as you do it more and more, you kind of figure out where the middle is, and as you just make little adjustments with your like, a little bit, really your toes to kind of keep the cylinder in the middle. And as you get good at kind of keeping it there, you kind of learn how to apply weight back and forth. Like more weight on your right foot pushes the cylinder to your left, and trying to touch the little stops that are there and trying to like play little games with it. And then as soon as you start getting confident, right, then you get thrown on the ground by it. You know,
Yeah.
like doing it on like carpet is easier because it makes the cylinder kind of roll slower versus doing like on tile. And so as you get better and better, you kind of find more and more ways to make it more difficult. But it's just the little adjustments are the ones you want to kind of figure out versus the big pushes, the big slides back and forth.
Did you notice any skill transfer athletically in any of your athletic
Oh yeah,
pursuits?
yeah. Just on cycling, especially like low speed stuff, I got really good at like balancing, and I had coaches who were always kind of pushing balance work. And even in jujitsu, I know they have a really good sense of balance and a really good sense of kind of knowing where I am in space and knowing where the tipping points are, or where like finding that ability to kind of push somebody past the post or keep my control of side control, not getting tipped over the top. Kind of feeling that a lot.
Yeah. The concept of your base in
Hmm.
wrestling and jujitsu is definitely about distributing the weight out, right?
Hmm.
And finding that place. One word that you used a couple of times when you started describing it was the middle, right? You were trying to find the middle. So I think, do you think it's fair to say that the search for balance is the search for the middle?
Yeah, and it's funny, like so talking about balance and talking about like the little adjustments in here and there, like it kind of brought the thought in my mind, and we can maybe take this a different direction. But it's like you start thinking about because I'm 41, we're all in our 40s, right? I think Chris, you're 40, right?
Yep.
Yeah, like thinking about midlife crises. Because a midlife crisis is like huge changes in people's lives, oftentimes, where people kind of take stock for what's going on in their life, and they either go, "Yes, this is great. I want to keep doing this for the next 40 years," or they're like, "I don't want to do this anymore. I want this change." And so, and not that it's affecting or happening to me at all, but I've been kind of I know a few people who have kind of been going through that. Not people not they bought sports cars, but like it's a really interesting kind of thing to kind of start seeing this phase of my life being like, okay, well, yeah, I'm about halfway now, and what do I want to fix? What do I want to change? What's my identity? Kind of a thing going forward.
Yeah, it's a natural place in life to do that.
Hmm.
So I'm curious, do you think it's the norm for everyone to do that? Or and maybe the question isn't that. Maybe the evaluative nature of it is not the question. Maybe it's what is it do you think that causes some people to get to that point and to either buy the sports car or hit the gym or not do anything? Like when you get to that point, you definitely start taking stock, right?
Hmm.
Like you definitely start going, okay, what do I have left? What's still working? What's falling off? Like where am I at? The middle becomes a more elusive thing. And I think that it was I think the analogy that you used was such a crazy good one. Like it hit me out of left field because, um, in the beginning, even, like for me, I started jujitsu in my late 30s. Um, Definitely, like on carpet or something
Yeah,
thicker, where it was like,
yeah.
"Don't go anywhere." And I find that as I get older, I don't even have to move the wheel, right? It rolls onto tile on its own, right? All of a
Hmm.
sudden, I find myself on a slipperier surface without having done anything, different, that you could even measure, just by being alive for a couple more years, all of a sudden that wheel ended up in a different place.
Hmm.
Um, that's really a fascinating one. And then Chris, I want to come over to you. Do you have experience on like slacklining or balance beaming or anything like that?
I've tried slackline enough times to know that I have horrific balance. And I've done the endo board before, and when I was younger, I did a lot of skateboarding and a lot of surfing. Spent a ton of time in the cold water in Santa Cruz,
Yeah.
and you know, the slack line was something that when you look at it, you're going, yeah, that's going to be impossible. And then you get on it, and you're like, yep, I was right. You know, it's like there's no surprises.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't done much of it. I tried balance beams and stuff like that before, or just even, walking on a straight line when you see a painted line on the road or
Right,
whatever.
right, right.
It's interesting how easily your balance can get thrown off when you're focusing on
Mhm.
maintaining it. Um, but as I was processing through, as I've been processing through this conversation so far, um, I realized that the examples are a little more different than I thought, because if I tried to take the model or the example that I used of cost versus resources, how would we apply that to something like slacklining or something like, the balance board? What would be the resources and what would be the cost?
It's an interesting way of phrasing it. I'm not sure I would look at the scales in terms of it has to be balance or it has to be cost and it has to be resources. Um, I look at it as more of it's contextual, it's dynamic. It could be anything on either side. If it's not cost, then it's strength or weakness. If it's, the pursuit of knowledge versus the pursuit of convenience, kind of like the episode that we were on recently. So I almost think of like the slack line related to that in terms of the amount of energy it takes to go find the middle, to go find what that balance is. Uh, I think playing it out, right? Like you fall off a slack line, it's the same thing as the scale tipping all the way in one direction, right? And you have no perspective. That's the risk. You have no idea about the potential detriment by just being all the way off on one side. You can't stay on the slack line. You can't balance the scale.
But do you think it would be fair to say strength or weakness is just a measure of resources?
Yeah, but
I mean, because
yeah, but again, there's going to be context there, right?
Yeah.
sure, but that's fine. But I think that, right, like we can use different terminology and change the context, but the essence of it is what I'm curious about. One way or another, in order to find balance, something has to move.
Yeah.
Right? You can't be off balance and then without moving or changing anything, you're on balance. Right? There has to be a give somewhere. And that give, whatever that give is, I would consider cost. And your ability to give it or not give it is your resources. So in
I
that
see what you're
context,
saying.
you know what I mean? Like,
I do. I think I see the context a little differently, or rather, like the source of it. I see it as cost and benefit on either sides of the
okay,
scale, and the resources or the energy it takes that you need to exert in order to balance those two extremes.
okay. So instead of resources, it's benefit.
Right.
Um, okay. I mean,
It's somewhat
the benefit the
picky.
benefit being, so in this case though, the benefit would be I either stay on the beam or I don't stay on the beam,
Right.
or
Right.
I can balance on the board or I can't.
Right.
In the example of a scale, right, I can either afford something or I can't afford it.
Right. Right.
um Interesting. I think the definitions are pretty close.
Yeah, I think so
You
too.
can
Well,
definitely see how they're related.
yeah, I think also kind of a part of it that goes into it also is like the idea of good enough versus the idea of like mastering something or mastering it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like you can be good enough on a slack line or an endo board, right? I could stay on it. I'm gonna be my feet are gonna be
But
bounced
it's
all
never going to
around.
be like perfectly level.
Exactly. Yeah. And kind of trying to
Yeah.
figure out what your investment level wants to be. Like, do you want to be just good enough, or do you want to be like a mastery? And then from there, it's
And
what's
that's
mastery.
that's super interesting
Mm-hmm.
because we're not taught. We've been using the extreme example of like a straight point, right? There's like
Mhm.
one tiny point where the balance has to be perfect. But I guess this would feed a little bit more, Chris, maybe into what you're talking about in terms of the way we scale it on a human level or on a on a personal level. That middle point might be a little wider for
Yeah.
some of us, right?
Mhm.
you know,
Right. Greater
uh,
margin for error.
greater margin for error, also greater measures of success. Like you might beat yourself up less for getting closer to the middle than than being far out into, you could measure that as progress. And then maybe maybe true balance starts to be where you really narrow that spot down until you can pinpoint it and everything maintains its position.
Absolutely. It's funny. I don't know if I want to uncork this can of worms, but at least to introduce the idea, like we've talked all in the past about the notion of a hobbyist in jujitsu and a competitor in jujitsu.
Yeah.
And I think kind of where I've landed as it relates to this discussion is that like, yes, if I were to train like a competitor, I would grow my skill exponentially. I would accelerate. I would be better. At what cost? Like my body is already beat up. My schedule's already full. I'm already getting the physical, mental, emotional benefits from it that are far more meaningful to me than necessarily competing or showing and having a medal. Now, I'd love to help out my, friends who are competing. I would happily corner,
Mhm.
but I'm also sitting there like that cost is too high for the benefit. Like the benefit for me is far greater on the emotional, physical growth than on looking down at other people and be like, yeah, I know I'm better than you. Like that doesn't interest me.
Yeah, because we've also talked about how there's levels to everything, right? No,
Chris.
Jordan, come on. You know how like sometimes when you're in the other room and you can hear the teapot just start steaming? I'm
Yeah.
like, I didn't even have to look over at Jordan and I could tell, like I could hear the whistle.
Yeah.
What do you
If you
got,
know,
buddy?
you know. Yeah.
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 So funny, so funny. No, but do you want to comment on that?
Jiu-jitsu is a fun sport, right? And they're and the competitors are just so much better than the hobbyists, and
Right.
they just look down on us
Yeah.
as poor plebes,
Training fodder.
hobbyists,
Yeah.
training fodder.
We
And then
probably
others,
don't owe it to anyone to tell them, but we've had some bad experiences with
yeah,
instructors and coaches who have basically told us that our jujitsu is meaningless unless we are competing and fighting to that level. And it's something that all of us just adamantly do not agree with. But
well, and
anyways,
the great thing is too, being at Kenny school now, he's never once approached me about competition. Never. He doesn't care. Like he doesn't need me to compete if I don't want to compete. And I've talked to him, like our competition black belts we have at our school. We have the kids teacher is an incredible, one of the best, probably one of the first women black belts in the country, one of the first UFC people signed by the UFC as a woman, and she's just like, Jordan, this room there's maybe two people in here who are actual competitors, and she said everybody else is a hobbyist. Even if you compete, you're probably still a hobbyist, and it's just like nobody needs that, and it's a and for me, like I like training. I like training hard, and I like putting the work in. And I'll do 5-6 days a week training, and I love it. And I'll lift weights, and I'll run, and I'll do everything else. Like I just have no interest in competing, and I hate the idea of being punished for something I'm not passionate about. And I remember talking to people about that in the past because it's just not necessary. And I don't know, your jiu-jitsu journey is your own, and I know it's kind of a cliche thing to always say, but yeah, that competition perspective it's seeing who holds that competition perspective is necessary for promotion. Like they're specimens, right? They're specimens in our sport and athletically and physically when they can talk that way.
yeah, levels, right? Levels to
Levels,
everything.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so in a non jujitsu specific setting, um, there's still an incredible amount of push for competition in all areas of life, right? Like people are driving themselves to compete in everything. I have people that feel like things we do at work are a competition, and um you know, there are sometimes people pull up next to me at the stoplight in a really expensive car, and clearly they're in competition with me. um
Even though
you
you're
know,
totally unaware and don't,
I'm
you're
totally
Yeah.
not
unaware of it,
right.
oblivious to it. Nothing makes people who are competing more mad than you acting like you have no idea that
Yeah,
we're competing at
that
all.
you're not
Yeah.
engaged, right? 100%.
Yeah.
I don't even acknowledge that we're playing the same game, sir. So whatever you're,
Sure. You're
whatever you're
really good
thinking,
at whatever it is. Yeah.
yeah. I usually start with a nice slow clap as I make direct eye contact. Uh, you know, just to let you know, I acknowledge that you're the superior specimen out there
Right.
on the
Yeah.
road.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so funny. So let's take it back a little bit. What are the signs to you, or what sticks out in your mind when you hear the word imbalance? So obviously this is the inverse of balance. We're looking for, what does the opposite of balance look like?
I think it's probably chaos, or hyper focus on something that's not getting you that balance that you need, right? Where balance is steady and maintainable and easy ish, right? Imbalance would be more of a chaos and kind of just running by the seat of your pants sort of a thing.
What do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah. I think that tracks. I think of imbalance as being like super rigid. Um, if we take balance as like the core skill for balance is that you can adapt and that you're responsive, I think then imbalance would be rigidity and refusal to adapt just for the sake of doing so.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking of the surfing example you used earlier,
Yeah.
and I've never been ocean surfing, but I've done a lot of wake surfing in the like the lakes and stuff. And it's interesting to me how fluidly my hips move on a jujitsu mat and how rigid and stiff they are as soon as I'm on a
Yeah.
surfboard. And,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable, right? It's the
Yeah,
same exact movement in a
it
different
is.
context.
Yeah.
Um, and I think of that all the time, like Jordan, like you were saying, my wake surfing has a nice wide center point, right? Like I can stick in the wave and I can surf along behind the boat for half an hour, or I can do little things. But as soon as I start to do something that takes me out of that safe, rigid hip space, it gets rocky. And then this, I think, is what leads to the overreacting, and
Hmm.
maybe there's other words that you could use in different contexts for balance, or getting out, ending up imbalanced. um so do you think that what do you think the motivation is for finding balance immediately when you are aware of imbalance? What do you think that first emotion is that kicks in, um, to make you desire to even try to balance things out?
For me, it's anxiety right away. Like if I know that I'm out of balance, if I know something's off, if I know it's rigid, then it's the anxiety that pops up of, well, how did we get here? What mistakes were made along the way? What's the fix? I don't know what the fix is. And then you just start spinning out on those kinds of things. So, I mean, right away, it's the stress of it.
What do you think, Jordan? Does that track with
I'd
you?
say yeah, just trying to take account for what's going on and what has happened or what has changed that makes that imbalance exist. Like
Yeah.
in your life, like has some outside factor come in that expose something to you, or is something you've gotten used to, you realize it's not good anymore, or kind of taking stock from with what you have and what's changed.
Yeah, because you can develop a false sense of balance being imbalanced if you can just do it long enough to become accustomed to it, right? Not every example is going to throw you off the slack line, especially if you have a wide middle point. You know, it's easy to get complacent when you start slipping into the outer edges of one side or the other, the cost getting too high or the resources running low or what, either way.
Right.
To find yourself. And I think I think I probably feel the same way. I think it's probably that fear, knee-jerk response that causes you to overcompensate, when you just like, not that this ever happens to me, but I've seen people driving down the road where they just start slowly veering into another lane because they're not fully paying attention. Like I said, I would never do this.
Looking at their phone.
Or looking, and then all of a sudden you realize like I'm halfway in somebody else's lane and there's somebody there. Your immediate response is I got to get back to the middle of my lane. But in order to get back there, I usually end up on the far other side of my lane, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then you're swerving. I mean, not me, the people I've seen do.
Right. No, never.
I think there's also as an aspect of time and time compressing. And I know I've experienced that moving across the country, right? When you have this date of, we're moving on this day, and as time starts to kind of pass and that date gets closer and closer, like everybody else's life around you is continuing normal and your life is changing, and you can feel that kind of that compression. And it's become even interesting more for me because there's a family at our jiu-jitsu school who's actually moving to Thailand, and they're moving on the 31st of this month. Yeah, and the wife and I were talking about it, and she's just like, yeah, I feel like this, like the world around me is compressing, and nobody can feel it but me. And I'm just like, I know that feeling because we did that a couple of years ago when we moved out here. Like everybody else, their life continues on, and you realize that friendships are going to change and relationships are going to change and stuff like that because of that compression of time that's coming. And she was really, because it's kind of interesting, kind of just talking about more and more with her, and what they're feeling like, what the family's feeling like, and the kids are feeling. It's like, yeah, everything around you is compressing just on you and not anybody else.
Yeah. And I think that's probably because we haven't got into stress yet, even though that is part of the, even though that's part of the quote. So we'll start scooting that way in a few minutes. But yeah, I think I think that's interesting too, because you hear so many people use the word balance and how important it is to find balance, right? But they're all interpreting that center point differently, right? So somebody else's balance, might be on a scale that's super wide, and they're describing something to me where I think of it as being very sharp and pointed, like there's no room for a little, like for instance, I've known a lot of people who have been in recovery from alcoholism, right? And they can't be around someone opening a beer without it completely imbalancing their life. Whereas for me, I'm not even really interested in drinking beer. Like, I might have one every once in a while when it's, when it's like super hot outside, whatever. I'm doing outside work, but it's not, I don't have that same thing. Right. So part of balance, I think in this instance too, necessitates that you have a really clear understanding of what your balance point is, like what you're, and I think it's interesting too that, when we were talking about finding that middle place, I was just thinking about how different everyone's journey is, and like you were saying, for me to compete means that I have to take an already grueling life schedule, a schedule where I already feel a little bit behind, even in my normal training, right? And then I have to add more to that because I have to be as ready as possible for every eventuality. That starts to me to be where the cost stacks up more than I have resources to cover that. Right. And when you get to that point, I literally think of competing sometimes as I just can't afford that.
Interesting.
I can't afford it in my life.
I think when I'm hearing you talk about it, something clicks for me in the sense that like when we've been using these examples of balance, whether it's the endo board or the slack line or the scale, the notion or the implication rather is to try to find an equilibrium where everything is just so. And maybe it's not necessarily about equality, but it's about like how the entire system coheres. So whatever you're trying to achieve balance for, maybe it's assuming that there's never going to be equality. And so you find that point where, Randy, using your scales, right? Where the cost and the resources are okay with you and where you want to invest and what you want to spend. So it's never going to like it won't be equal. It's just coherence. How does this?
Right. Yeah. I think the way that I was looking at equality in that sense is like, making sure that the scale measures up properly. So that like if you go to the grocery store when they used to use the old scales or whatever,
With the
and
tare weight knobs?
they would stack weight
Yeah.
on one side and then they would stack your gold on the other side, right? Until it
Right.
equaled out.
And I'm
And
kind of like,
certainly there's
that's
no, go
kind of
ahead.
where I'm getting too, right? Like you can take on one side 5 pounds of something, adjust the tare weight, and put 1 pound of something else on the other side of the scale, and it will show equilibrium. But because you've had to adjust the tare to say that my 5 pounds of thing A is worth 1 pound of thing B, so I'm going to adjust my system so it's more
Right.
coherent.
Right. Yeah, and then just like circling all the way back to what the examples we've been using, right? It doesn't really matter what causes that equality or causes us to get to that point. It does What matters is our recognition of it and the appropriate response in small increments rather than overcompensating or overreacting to something, right?
So then it's our, like, in this sense, then it's our responsibility to understand what balance means for us.
I think it
We have to
absolutely
define
is.
it.
And if so, like, let's think of it in terms of goods and money, right? I get a job where I start making a little bit more money. Well, all of a sudden now, a car dealership calls me and they say, "Hey, all of a sudden you can afford this car." And then when I go, they sell me more of a car than I actually can afford, right?
Hmm.
So all of a sudden, my cost resource balance is off. Now I have too much debt and not enough money to cover it, right?
Hmm.
So unless I find a way to add more resources, I'm perpetually going to be imbalanced there,
Hmm.
right? In this case, it wouldn't even just be enough to make enough more money now to balance us because that's just one weight, right? That's just one debt. That's just one piece of the equation. Um, when you start thinking about how granular that gets, stack everything that you have to think about on one side of the scale as a cost. What does it cost me financially? What does it cost me physically? What does it cost me emotionally? What does it cost me mentally? What does it cost me time wise? What does it cost me, you know, in any sense in your life where things can have a cost that eventually will run out a finite amount of resources?
Hmm.
Um, that's where we get into stress, right? So in this instance, using these examples, is it fair to classify stress as a leading indicator of imbalance?
I absolutely think so.
Hmm. I'd say yeah.
And then the type of stress or the way it manifests itself is directly related to the type of costs that we're dealing with, right? So to me, I don't care about money. I don't care about having it. I don't care about not having it. I've lived with $0. I've lived with enough to save money in different ports of my life. And I just don't care about it. I hate talking about it. I hate thinking about it. It's just one of those things that doesn't matter to me. But um, a personal relationship of mine being out of balance with someone else will keep me
Mm.
awake at night. Um, I will stress about that. I will stress about you, right? Uh, I won't stress about money, but I will stress about you. Um, so I guess what I'm curious and what I'm trying to think about is how do we evaluate and properly identify where the stress is coming from so that we can make the small adjustments necessary to get those areas back closer to balanced. What do you think? Like, what has been your strategies whenever you've had a stressful thing, or have you ever had a stressful thing where you didn't know exactly why you felt the way you felt, but you just felt off?
You take all the stress and the anxiety and you put it in like a little box and you just shove it way down and just ignore it.
Yeah.
Just wait till it goes away. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Totally. Except
Right.
eventually it does
It
resurface, and then
explodes.
it's fermented and smelly.
Right.
Um, but no, I've had times in my life where there's been stress that I could easily identify, right? I know exactly what's causing it. And it gives me a good idea of what the options are for how to deal with it. But there have also been times in my life where I just felt weird or off or not good, and I couldn't identify what it was. I
Yeah.
there were no obvious reasons why. Um, have you ever dealt with anything like that? And if you'd have, what was, you know, or have you not still dealt with it? There are probably things I'm trying to unpack everything in my life right now, right? Like I'm going through
Mhm.
all the old files and all the old garbage. It's time to clean up the hard drive. Um, and so then I'm finding things where now in a healthier place, I can look back and go, oh, well, no wonder I've been stressing about that thing, like that's clearly out of place for who I am as a person.
Mhm.
Um, how do what are your strategies, if you have them, for how you audit those things that might be causing stress, or imbalance in your life?
I think for me, it's that little making the little micro adjustments and trying to maybe understand kind of what is causing the stress and what are little adjustments I can make. Like trying to avoid the big knee jerk reactions to things or the overcorrections, like you said, and not trying to like completely throw my life out of balance. Just trying to make a little fix or trying to find little fixes here and there. And I don't know. I luckily for me, there's never been a really huge problem in my life that requires a huge adjustment, right? But but I think, and it kind of going back to that whole like the midlife crisis thing, like that's a time in people's lives when they have the situation where they're like, either a big change has to happen, or I'm going to continue to do what I've been doing until I die.
Yeah.
And
Challenge you a little bit, Jordan, because you're I think because of who you are and how you process stress, probably. I don't think you probably would assign it the same level of importance that maybe someone else is. So like you having your shoulder surgery. A lot of people would take that and they would go, well, for this amount of time, what the doctor said, I am going to have my arm strapped across my chest, and I'm going to rest as much as possible, and I'm going to put ice on it, and I'm going to take medicine, and I'm just going to rest it out, right? I'm going to let
Mhm.
my body recover. That's my balance, right? Right now I have less resources in the arm, so I'm going to
Right.
put a little bit more money, you
Reduce
know what
the
I mean?
cost a little bit.
Reduce the cost a little bit.
Yeah,
Jordan's like, swipe the card, baby. Let's put some more debt on the thing. What are we doing
yeah,
here?
400 calories on the assault bike the
yeah.
next day.
Every
Yeah.
day.
Jordan comes out stronger and leaner and more scary somehow after a surgery. Um, but why, uh, you know, why do you
So,
think
but
that
but no,
is?
honestly though, in that time though, like I remember when I tore my shoulder and the kind of time before the surgery and the time kind of thinking about it, like I was talking to my wife about it, I'm like, I could easily quit jujitsu right now. Like with the experience that I had at my old school and kind of the how I left the bad taste in my mouth and not being fully integrated in my new school and kind of being there for a month and a half and like not really being a known quantity
Super out of
and then
balance.
super out of balance. And yeah, then the shoulder issue happens. It's like this could all disappear, and I could not show up at jiu-jitsu anymore, and nobody would miss me, and the journey would just be over. Like I remember kind of having never really feeding into that thought process, but really kind of having that realization, like, if I had a weaker personality type, I could easily just make this my new thing and make this shoulder surgery the thing that ends my jiu-jitsu career, and it would be understandable because, hey, I have a shoulder surgery and I can't come back the way I used to do, so it's easy. I'll do something new now.
So it's interesting because I think that probably your pragmatic nature also allows you to have unemotional conversations with yourself and with other people about things that probably hold more emotional weight for other people, right?
Yeah.
And I think also too, in a situation like that, there's a tendency to go, well, the thing I'm doing is hard, and now I'm getting a doctor ordered break, right? So I have a justified and valid reason to take it easy for the next 2 months or 3 months or whatever. Even though that's also going to throw me in a completely different kind of imbalance, right? I might, my shoulder might feel better, but my cardio and my movement and my timing are going to be absolute, horse manure by the time I come back on the mat. But Chris, I can almost guarantee that you have a different way of handling things than than Jordan.
Maybe.
Fire up the PlayStation.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm super curious. Like, what does that look like on the other side for you? I know we were joking around about, stuffing it in a box and burying it, but
Yeah. My wife has a hilarious view on this. There's this show on Apple TV. It's based on a comic, and it's called Murderbot. And the Murderbot is exactly as you would imagine it. It is highly proficient, highly skilled, zero emotion, zero sense of self or depth, and it just goes and does all of the tasks at a way faster rate than anybody could have anticipated. And so she always goes, I can tell when you're off because you're in Murderbot mode. The dishes are all of a sudden clean, you're rage cleaning the house, you've done your workout, work is finished, you've scheduled the next 3 BJJ sessions, all of your shit's folded, and lunches are made for the week. Just she'll look at me, she'll go, so what's bothering you? Like, what's going on?
yeah,
And
that's interesting.
and it's funny. I mean, this realization has popped up in the past, 6 months or so. And my default method for dealing with stress was like tasking my way out of it. Right? If something was messed up, I would never source it. I wouldn't look for what was causing it. I would just find something to put that stress energy into. Like it felt like caffeine. It still does, right? It feels like a jolt where you're like, all right, what am I going to go do? I'm going to go knock out a presentation for work. I'm going to go rehearse for the big, call next week. I'm going to get 20, I'm going to you can just find me outside doing yard work, which is like a once in a lifetime sight, right? Like I, I have all of this like pent up, energy. And now I think the biggest method has been like, I don't know what's bothering me. I have no idea where the source of the stress is coming from, but I'm feeling very energized. And I'm like, I don't know what it's about. And I don't know about you guys. I didn't grow up talking about myself or about the way I was feeling or about any of that stuff. And so to sit there and have my wife like pull and excavate and be like, okay, so you're stressed. How was work? And I'm like, well, I don't want to tell you about it because like you don't know what I like. You don't speak all the same terms that I speak, and like it's just gonna be boring for you, and you're not gonna care. And she's like, doesn't matter. You still have to say it. And just the process of like interrupting that murder bot loop of super task completion has been, I think, the first step in dealing with it in a healthier way.
Yeah. That's super interesting. And thank you for sharing that. That's
Yeah,
Murderbot. I love the analogy.
murderbot
Um,
mode.
yeah, I didn't grow up talking too much about my feelings and stuff like that either. I was very shielded and very armored up,
Yeah,
in my younger life. And now I sort of feel like, that the first tiger shark they caught on Jaws when they thought they actually caught Jaws, you know, and they cut the
We
belly
got
open
him.
and there's like license plates and, you know, and old fish and boots and stuff coming out.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
everything
yeah.
just spilling out on the dock. Yeah, and it's funny because Michelle knows me well enough that like instantly, um, I don't go that way. I am not energized by stress at all. I am completely on the downside of that,
Oh,
right?
interesting.
It's like I'm not talking, I'm not being expressive. I'm kind of, you know, distracted, uh, not in a good place at all, you know. Stress hits me hard, you know,
Yeah.
for some reason. And so because of that, it's been crucial for me to be able to find ways that I can get back closer to the middle. Um, and you know, some of those were slow, methodical, you know, try this, then that. Some of them were big knee jerk, you know, or wheel jerk. Um, but because those are options, I want to, as we, you know, get towards the end of this episode, I want to pivot a little bit and talk about what's appropriate, you know, in finding balance. Um, and also a little bit of encouragement for you out there if you're listening to this, because I don't. I'm going to say I know personally for myself, the big knee jerk reactions that throw you into imbalance the other way are not always the wrong move. I'm going to say that
Okay.
again because I think it's really important to chew on this. Just because you overreacted and got way to the other side does not mean that you made the wrong move. When I first went to jujitsu, it was pure desperation, right? Completely out, and we talked about this before, but just completely out of shape, unhealthy, um, scared, you know, for my health and my future, not sure what I was going to do. And going into that first class and sticking with it for the first 6 months was absolutely a hard turn on the wheel, right? It was a pull in the complete opposite direction. Um, I had to correct back slowly, but what I tend to do, and I think, and tell me if you can relate to this, but as I get down off balance one way, I get used to the perspective there, right?
Mm,
And so then I'm like, okay, well, I may not be feeling great, but I know what to expect out of it,
Hmm.
right? And it's so then you deal with symptoms of it. But I think pulling that wheel and going completely to the opposite side serves one really beneficial function, and that's you get all the perspective all the way over to the other side, right? So now you're on the extreme side of things. And I think that you learn the most about yourself when you have access to the most information about yourself, right?
mhm.
Sometimes that takes an extreme action. Sometimes it takes a real rip off the band-aid, a real jump in the deep end, you know, type of movement to shake you out of the complacency that's keeping you imbalanced. Is that relatable to you at all? Have you ever experienced any, you know, situations like that in your lives?
I think when I'm ending sports, 'cause I played baseball from like 4 to 18, right? I did mountain biking from 18 to 30, and it's like these kind of, we start to near the end of something, you're kind of like we start to realize more and more. You're like, this is not my thing anymore. Like this is not what I want to do. This is not who I want to be. And you're kind of like that slow process where it gets to the end and you're just like, and now I'm done. And I'm the kind of person who, when I end something, it's over. Like I don't look back. I
Mm,
don't think about it. I don't move on, or I move on. I don't like kind of reevaluate it after it's been decided.
Yeah.
And
No
it's like, and
postmortems.
yeah, and it's like, oh, nope, it's done. Moving on. So I don't know. I think there's definitely been times in my life where I've kind of ended things that are a long time coming, kind of a thing. But
In Do you think that in that, or have you ever experienced, do you think there's a danger in, or like, I assume that if you're going to decide that you're at the end of something, that it's through careful deliberation and, you know, and thinking it through and evaluating all the way down the road, you know, like I assume
mhm.
all those things. Have you ever made that decision where that wasn't the case, where you ended up going, oh, maybe this isn't as done as I thought it was?
I didn't think about that.
I,
Yeah.
I have like that's kind of where I'm at. I think when I was, let's see, back in like 2008, um, I hurt my ankle badly. I had a compound dislocation and everything below the knee was ripped, and I sheared half of the cartilage off. And so, for people who don't know, arthritis is basically when your cartilage begins to fail, and I had lost half of mine, just one key injury. Prior to that point, all through my childhood, my teens, and my early 20s, basketball was my life. I loved it. I lived it. I breathed it. I played it constantly. I could go out into the park and run full 5-on-5 games from 6 in the evening to 11 p.m. when they turned the lights off, and I'd still be getting shots up when the lights were off because I wanted to get better at shooting when I couldn't see. And I got hurt going up for a layup, and my foot landed on a concrete anchor at the same time someone else's foot landed on top of mine. So I got pinned on the concrete anchor and my shoe got stuck. There was a hole and it ripped my foot from my leg. And I was in the hospital for 3 days.
Yeesh.
And that was a whole lot of perspective right at once because everything that I've built my day around was gone. I was going to be in crutches for 18 weeks. My ankle, what is it, 17 years later, it's now had 3 surgeries on it, and I can't really run and all of that stuff. And so, Randy, you're like, God, talk about like veering into the other lane way too much. But I don't know, without that, I would have recognized like, sure, basketball was fun, but like it wasn't doing anything for my growth. And I had to go through a long number of years of being like, you know what? I'm never going to be an athlete. I'm not, I need to reassess my identity. And then I found jujitsu. And then I found the power that comes from thinking that something was done and finished and over. And with just a little bit of a different perspective, it's fresh
Hmm.
and it accelerates you and it pushes you to the next level. So sometimes you don't get to choose when something's over. Shit'll just happen. it, you know, with the right perspective to overcorrect, it may give you something brand new.
Do you think that balance or imbalance is the more natural state of things?
I think people fluctuate. I don't think it's either one or the other. I think people fluctuate from balance to imbalance, and how they react to it is kind of how their life seems to go.
Yeah, I think it's dynamic. It's the notion of like, do you recognize when you are out of balance, and then what actions or adaptations are required to pursue better balance?
Do you think that there are, in general, like if you think of just sort of tools or things that you can use to find balance, do you think that there are general practices that you can put in place that keep you closer to balance so that you don't have to constantly make? And if so, if you do think that, what do you have any examples of like the ones that you personally use?
I think consistency is really the key part of it. Like, I don't know. For me, it's like it's interesting. Like, so we're here in Florida, and we're doing a lot of the Disney
Cool.
water parks. And so it's, man, you go to water parks in America, my friend, and you will see a plethora of fat dudes, and it is shocking. It's the 99 percentile of people are vastly overweight here, and it might be a self-selecting group of people who like Disney, or might be overweight more than people who don't like Disney. But it's a staggering feeling to be walking around there and to see 3 other people who look like me, and throughout the entire day
Right.
of people
Out
who
of
attend the
thousands.
Disney, out of thousands of people. And it's just like, well, this is like, I'm nothing special. Like, I just am super consistent with the things that I do in my life. And I find my stasis and I find that balance point, and then I just make a living around it. It's, and so many people like struggle with weight and struggle with diet and stuff like that. And it's just like, there's no magic fix for it. There's no magic thing. It's just kind of being consistent, being dedicated, being, it's just, I think for me, it's just, that's kind of what I do is I find something that works for me and I just do it until I die. And
I think that's like probably one of the characteristics that I associate with you the most.
mhm.
Me too. 100%.
Is that is that consistency, because I think what people don't understand about consistency, and when when you get those comments from people, even your close friends that are just like, yeah, F this guy for,
400
but
calories on an air bike with one arm.
Yeah.
Jordan's doing air squats on the airplane to Florida.
Yeah.
But I was talking to Jimmy the other day about momentum, because we're both just in this place where work is just handing us our asses, and we're working so many hours and nonstop. And then you're trying to go to the gym, and you're trying to do your jujitsu, and you're trying to sleep, and you're trying to do the things that you want to do, right? I'm really in, like, this balance conversation is really timely for me right now, because I'm really working on it. But the idea of consistency to me always speaks to building momentum, right? And how when you break off from that consistency and from that routine, you immediately start to lose momentum. And nothing is more frustrating in life than losing momentum. If you don't believe me, have somebody slow you down and drive 30 on a 65-mile-an-hour freeway. Like, it will drive you insane. Okay. No matter who you are or how good of a person you are. But I think people have a tendency, or at least sometimes I have a tendency, to underestimate how much it really takes to start gaining momentum, in the first place. Everybody just sees the ball rolling downhill, but they don't think of, the mountain on the other side that you had to push the ball up, right, to get it rolling down the other side. Do you think people underestimate how hard it is to build momentum, and that's why they're less likely to be consistent with something?
I think
Or
so.
is there another reason?
I also think momentum is very fragile.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because what you like, I think most people will know what momentum feels like when they have it and they're in a groove and they're rolling. And I think more people know what it's like when they don't have it. They just don't know what to call it. And when you feel that switch, you feel the momentum, and then miss, like, Jordan's extreme examples, right? Like, if he's not doing the air squats on the plane, then that momentum is gone, right?
Mhm.
It's the
Yeah.
fragility of it.
Oh yeah, that's the comments I had with the person about my shoulder surgery. She's like, "Oh yeah, take it easy." I'm like, "No, I'm losing momentum." I remember saying that word to her. It's too hard to get and it's too easy to lose, and I can't have that be what
Yeah,
it is.
and fragile, I think, is such a great way to describe it, right? Because it instantly, when you said fragile, for some reason, the words that popped in immediately were cheat day. I don't know why, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
everybody gives themselves a cheat day when they're trying to do something, eating right or exercising or whatever,
Sure.
and then that cheat day turns into your new momentum,
Yeah.
right?
You
Now all
get
of a
you
sudden
get
you're
a big old case of the fuckets. Like, I messed up this
real
meal.
quick,
Yeah,
Fuck it.
real
I
quick.
just lean in. Yeah.
yeah.
One of the worst offenses that I do against myself is I break things up into a weekly thing. So it's like, oh, well, I screwed up on a Thursday, so I'm just going to keep cheating Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'll start over again Monday, right?
Yeah.
But I realized, because I was talking to my boys again last night, and we were talking about making the changes that you need to, for yourself and to find balance. And I give good advice, right? Better advice than I take. And I told them, don't wait until next week to start doing these things. Start doing them as soon as you get out of the truck, right? Like, as soon as you can implement these things, the sooner you can start building momentum and build that consistency, the quicker you're going to find balance, the less you're going to be cast into this stressful, imbalanced place. And especially if you slip deep enough into a imbalance, you might not find your way out for years, if ever, right? And then all of a sudden you're a different person, you have a different life. So I'm fascinated, if you're listening to this show and you have tips or tricks for people on how they can find balance, or what they're using, what you're personally using to build consistency or momentum, or if you think those things are important, write them down in the comments and, reach out to us, share them. I'm super fascinated by this subject. But since we are at time, as always, I just want to express gratitude as usual to Chris and Jordan. Thank you guys for being here, for your perspective. Fantastic conversation. I always just love where these things go. For everybody that's still sticking with us, thank you so much. We love you. We appreciate you. Reach out and let us know how you're doing, what you like, what you don't like. Follow, like, and subscribe, all the things. But if anything, just take some of these things and apply them and see how they're impacting your life one way or another. And then let us know. We'd love to know the impact that these conversations are making. So until then, this has been Sweeter After Difficulty. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, man.